Okay, so my opponent's major claim is the selling and or serving of junk food in public schools should no longer occur, with these three secondary claims. The first being, it is public schools' responsibility to help end the epidemic of childhood obesity. All members of society must play their role, and schools must gain benefits from this change, such as improving academic performances from students. The second, when students are given healthier options at school, they are more likely to eat healthier at home and have more energy to be active and exercise. And the third is, according to letsmove.gov, the past 3 decades, childhood obesity rates in America have tripled, and today nearly 1 in 3 children in America are overweight or obese. If we don't solve this problem, 1/3 of the children born in 2000 or later will suffer from diabetes at some point in their lives. Many others will face chronic obesity-related health problems like heart disease, high blood pressure, cancer, and asthma. Alright, so to begin with the first secondary claim, my advocate states it is the public school's responsibility to help end the epidemic of childhood obesity. I am dismissing this claim with my new claim, being public schools should provide more education on food and nutrition to their students. According to thesportsjournal.org, in 2003, out of 125 school districts studied, fewer than 10% provided any form of food and nutrition education. Teaching about food and nutrition to students has the ability to encourage one to choose a healthier food product. In doing so, the school accomplishes their responsibility in helping students. Moving on to all members of society must play their role as is more of a broad statement. In 2010, according to education.com, if franchise companies were to stop playing their role in banning the selling and serving of their food products in public schools, the outcome would result in a financial disaster. Also, these franchise companies establish contracts with school to provide school income and help keep school activities afloat. Ending the selling or serving of these food products would end financial aid provided by these established contracts. In 2006, a physician and board member of education in the Morga School District, east of San Francisco, states, "Our top priority is academic achievement. It's not our job to make sure kids eat right," declaring that public school system's main role is to provide education. But later on, it was then reported that Dr. Dexter Louis, the physician I just quoted, began public speaking at schools, providing health education. It is our parents' duty to teach us as children what decisions to become accustomed to, since they are our first teachers. The last statement in the first secondary claim, the schools will also gain benefits from this change, such as improved academic performances from students, is somewhat affiliated to the second claim. That is, when students are given healthier options at school, they are more likely to become healthier at home and have more energy to be active and exercise. When students do become more involved in athletic activities, the student does become more active and consume a healthier diet, but the student focus shifts towards the activity, causing less attention on an individual's academic performance. Referring back to the Sports Journal article of the 125 school districts studied, 23% of the schools indicated athletes could have no Fs to participate in the athletic group. 15% of the 25 indicated athletes could have 2 to 3 Fs and still participate in schools' activities. And then 87% of the 125 indicated students could still participate with 1 F. All narrowing down to students can still participate when not doing so well, failing to provide evidence that academic studies improve. The last claim about childhood obesity rates in America, 31% of children ages 2 through 19 in the U.S. are obese, with evidence from letsmove.gov, is simply true. All there is when it comes down to the decision on purchasing and eating junk food products is resulted from one's own action. Children are raised to know the difference from right and wrong, so they can handle the responsibility on making their own decision when thinking of their health, since the other 69% non-obese children have the ability to do so. So to close off the first claim, I challenge with my new claim, becoming, public schools should provide more education on food and nutrition to their students. The second claim, I provide evidence that proves my advocate's evidence incorrect. And lastly, the third claim, I agree with, except I believe a different solution should be carried out in order to make the change in childhood obesity.
All right, it gets a little problematic right at the beginning because, and this may be the fault of the advocate, because all of the secondary points don't really sound like claims. They sound like warrants and justifications rather than claims, and we're going to have to infer as to what the claims are, which makes the structure very difficult. I thought you were responding all to the first point when it turns out that you actually, everything that you're saying is part of a response to all the individual points. So it runs together as a consequence, and I think that's problematic. I think that at the end of your I think at the end of your presentation, when you're doing the summary, that is so much clearer than everything else that you're saying. If you went back and took those parts and you said, all right, here's the part where I was saying this, and just said, this is my claim right here, and then explained how all of the arguments fit together, that would just make it so much easier to figure out what you're talking about. I think you help yourself with that summary quite a bit, but you had to help yourself because things just kind of ran together in that other section. I do like some of the ideas that you have here. The notion that the public schools, should not be the focus of how we treat people's diets and food eating habits and all those sorts of things. I think that that's a pretty legitimate point to talk about, but you get into some policy argument discussions here, and in part that's the fault of the advocate, because they really do seem to be advocating a policy, not just making a claim of fact on it. The whole argument, for instance, you say that we should be educating the kids on the education. Don't turn it into a policy argument. Say the reason that they eat this food is because they don't know better. And here's the proof that they are uneducated about these things. So the source of the problem is not that the junk food's in the school, it's that the kids don't know what the best things to eat are. And that's the way that the problem could be addressed. So you're kind of going at the issue. I think you've got the right idea there, but you're going at it in the wrong direction because you've kind of turned it in, like I said, into a policy claim instead of a claim of fact. And then I think the idea that the schools shouldn't be responsible, it's the parents' responsibility. You do a pretty good job developing that argument. I think that needs to be, like I said, have its own second specialized claim. The performance issue, I don't know that the advocate proved that performance would be enhanced. There's a whole series of inferences that they made at that point. You basically repeat all of those inferences, and then you basically talk about how certain activities might have a counterproductive effect. But it doesn't really address the issue of whether or not proper nutrition, whether they were in better shape, would fix these problems. I think one of the arguments ought to be whether or not the thing that's happening to kids is because they have access to junk foods at school. You think that their kids aren't going to be drinking soda if it's not available at school? You think that they won't be eating Twinkies or... I guess nobody's eating Twinkies anymore. That's too sad. But they're not eating junk foods and those kinds of things because they're not available at schools. They wouldn't be eating it someplace else. I think there's a good argument to be made there. Your focus on the athletic thing basically kind of says, well, if they do get focused on this because they're trying to improve their diets, because that's kind of an ancillary argument that the advocate's making, then you're saying then it might have these negative consequences. And I just think that just takes you off track, and you're spending time talking about the number of F's that an athlete can have, and I'm trying to figure out how is that connected to the point that the advocate's talking about, and it's just too convoluted. So it doesn't make much sense. Like I said, though, at the end of the speech, I thought the summary did a good job trying to present the argument in a much clearer and more concise way. Thank you.